Where have you brought me to today, Kristian?
Well, I've brought you to one of my favourite venues, Firswood Fisheries in Skelmersdale, and it's just a brilliant little place. It's not very big. It's only a small little 2-lake fishery, but it's one of them places that you can come in the winter and guarantee yourself a few bites, which I absolutely love. Nice simple fishing. It's all 30-metre pole limit, and there's just a bit of everything in it. You wouldn't believe what's in this venue. You catch all sorts: barbel, chub, skimmers, big roach.
Let's have a little walk around,
and loads of big F1s. So this is what's called the big lake at Firswood in front of us now, which, you know, it's not very big for a big lake, but we call it the big lake. This is peg 1 that we've come to first. Now, this is a little bit of a quirky peg for Firswood. A lot of the lakes are just sort of just a straight open water peg in front here, but what you've got on this peg is you've got a little bit of a bowl that you get to yourself to your left. Now that can be, you know, like I can hold a few fish in the winter on certain days where it tends to be like on weird days where the main lake doesn't fish well, there tend to be a few fish that have just moved into there. So it's very shallow in here, very silty. It's probably about 2 foot deep, but you can tend to catch quite a few fish here on maggots again in the winter, just feeding maggots. Sometimes you catch them in the open water and sometimes you catch them more down this edge, but I sort of set a rig up for both. But generally I try and fish in the open water if I can, because I just feel like when you fish in the open water, when you start getting a few bites, you tend to get a bigger run of fish. So normally get a line there, then obviously just a line out into the main lake. And obviously if you're on this peg and the fish aren't there, it tends to tell you that the fish are out in the main lake, so you want to spend more time in front of yourself. So that's peg 1. Obviously in the summer on this peg, it tends to be a really good edge peg, just down this left edge.
Nice.
A lot of carp there normally. There is normally a few carp in this bay. You catch a few carp down this left edge, and then it's also a good peg for short pole as well, so like meat short. And we also catch a lot on feeding casters and worms short as well on here in the summer. But winter time, it's all maggots on this peg, I'd say.
What kind of weights do they catch here in summer?
In the summer, you can catch a lot of weights over 200 pounds. On the Wednesdays when he has a you know, like a 6-hour open match on a Wednesday, you normally need around 200 pounds to win. On the Monday night matches, 3 hours, you still need over 100 pounds, sometimes even up to 200 pounds. Real good weights, good stamp fish as well. So this is peg 2, which is probably one of the better pegs on the lake. Obviously you can see you've got an aerator out in front of you, and like I say, it's only a 30-metre pole limit, but 30 metres gets you just sort of to the left of the aerator. You can just be dead in line with the aerator, or you can fish in front of it depending on where you want to fish, but you can reach the aerator with 30 metres. See a fish just knock that aerator there now. So obviously that's a good little feature that you've got here on this peg. It's also quite a deep peg for this lake, especially short on, and it can often hold quite a lot of big skimmers. Really? I know Paul Brandrick last winter had 90 odd pound of skimmers off this peg.
Did he? Again,
it's one of them things where I say it throws a few surprises up. You wouldn't think a lake like this could have that many big skimmers in, but it does. And obviously that's just awesome winter fishing. You can catch 90 odd pound of skimmers. And then again, fishing up to the aerator this time of year, maggots on the bottom, maybe maggots shallow. And like I say, maggots short, maybe a bit of dobbing bread up to that aerator as well. Yeah, that's mainly the tactics on this peg, and a lot of the pegs, to be fair, they're all very similar in terms of that, all these open water pegs.
This looks like one of the pegs you would draw, Kristian, set up on a point out your way.
Yeah, I'd like to draw it, to be fair. I've been on that little lake a lot of the times lately, so if I'm due a peg on the big lake, I'd like it to be peg 2, because it is a good lake.
We did some filming on that peg last year, didn't we, in the summer?
Yeah, we did. That's where we did it when in the summer. And obviously summertime, shallow fishing with casters again out into that open water can work brilliant. Hi everyone, sorry for interrupting the video, but I just wanted to talk about 2 new videos that are out now over on the members channel, and they're both in-depth sort of masterclass style videos on the 2 main methods to target open water F1 venues such as Firswood, and that's dobbing and maggots. Now, sounds like pretty basic sort of tactics, but with a bit of a twist really, including like the dobbing video. We're talking about open water dobbing, which I feel like is a tactic that not everyone's seen before. They might have seen, you know, sort of fishing up to islands, far banks on Snake Lakes, but maybe not in open water. So that should be interesting and something that people can learn from. And then also the maggot video is quite an in-depth sort of video on feeding. So You know, there's loads of different ways with maggots to feed. You can feed with a catapult, you can use like a sprinkle pot, an open lid pot, and the best one on the day was actually this little one here, which is the Mickey Mouse lid pot, which I've doctored, which I talk about in the video. The little tiny little guru pot, that was absolutely brilliant. That was the best way to not foul up fish and put, you know, a fish in your net nice and consistently. So they're the key little things what I'm touching on in these videos. If you want to watch them, you need to get over to the, you know, the members channel on YouTube. You need to use a laptop or sort of a desktop computer to do that. Go and click the little black join button, and then you can watch it. You're sort of on your phone then, or whatever, your tablet. So yeah, get over and subscribe if you want to watch them videos. Loads of sort of info about this style of fishing at this time of the year. It should really help put more fish in your net. So the next peg that would be in on this lake is this one. That's 3A. Again,
3A?
3A. Yeah, so we've got 2, 3, 3A and 4. And basically, there only used to be 2, 3 and 4. But when we were sort of pegging it out for the Winter League one year, they decided to put a new platform in here just so everything was spaced out nice. So you could do 1, 2, 3A, and it just spaces out a little bit better than sort of 1, 2 and 3 or 1, 2 and 4. So that was why that was called 3A, because it was like a new pallet that was put in amongst it. So this is the next peg that's in. And again, this time of year, similar approach. You can catch a few dobbin. You can't quite reach that post out in the middle of the lake, but if you go out with 13 and fish with like a long rig and swing towards the post, you can catch a few fish dobbin there. Just, you know, just flicking it beyond your pole tip. And then obviously maggots at 13 metres on the bottom, maggots short. And then in the summer again, similar approach, out shallow, and again you've got 2 good edges here. Hopefully catch a few carp, ground bait and maggots.
Lovely. So there's a load of carp in here as well?
Yeah, loads. There's plenty of carp. And there's some big fish, you'd be surprised. Like again, the stamp of the carp, the cam, you know, in the summer you can get, you know, out of jail with a few carp on here. And you can also catch a few big fish dobbing in the winter if you're on if you find a little nest of them. It's a weird one on here for the carp. It tends to be like odd days where you don't see them and odd days where you'll see quite a lot of them. They have a good little munch.
Bet you catch some big weights of them in the edges in summer, don't you?
Oh, you can do, yeah. And this can be quite a good peg for them carp in the edge. This is peg 6. Again, obviously, if your next peg in is 3A, you've got a little bit of room between you and 3A here in this corner. And then this right edge here can be quite good. Obviously, again, at this time of the year, it probably doesn't look as inviting as it would in the summer. And there's like a little bit of a slab or something in the water here. I don't know what's happened. And it's like hanging down, and if you just fish just behind the slab and push your rig against the bank, you've got some nice shallow water and it's nice and flat, and you can tend to catch quite a few carp there in the summer. Again, this time of year, if you turn round, you've got 2 sort of dark patches of water there. That right hand side, that dark patch of water there is going quite a way towards peg 7, so you tend to fish to this left hand dark patch of water. Again, maggots, and then short with maggots again. Like I say, all the pegs are very similar in terms of that. But yes, on this bank, pegs 6 and 7's normally in. So 7's in as well. This is where we've been fishing today. You can see all my gear's still set up.
We've had a bite of chuck, haven't we?
Loads of bites. Considering how cold it is, you can probably tell I'm absolutely freezing. But yeah, we've had loads of bites. Again, we just caught on maggots in that dark patch, that right-hand patch, what we were talking about. And yeah, it was just loads of bites. Brilliant days fishing. Again, this time of year, maggots out in the open, but also you've got that bit of a bay
in this corner.
To your right, you've got that corner. At the minute, these 2 pegs haven't been getting used, 8 and 9, so you've got a bit of space to yourself there. So there's been a few fish to catch down there, as well as out in front. And then in the summer, down this right edge can be good.
Oh yeah.
Nice shallow edge there. You can catch well there, and then again just out in front in that dark patch of water, cast the shallow.
Mainly on the overshotted rig.
Yeah, that overshotted rig works really well on here, really well, because obviously big weights, you know, it calls for that overshotted rig. If you're going to catch them real big weights, up to 250, 300 pound even, can be, you know, achieved in the summer. So yeah, this is the little bay, pegs 8 and 9.
Have you ever drew down here in winter, this little corner?
Peg 8's never really used, but 9 can be used, and it's one of them. The reason they don't use it is because it's quite hit and miss, because you are real boxed in here, because they normally use peg 10 as well, because you're pretty boxed in here, if the fish aren't in this little bowl, you haven't really got anywhere else to go. So if they can't, you know, if they've got the option to not use it, they tend to not use it. But I've been here before, and you also do get some bites. It's just one of them. It's just people don't like it because they don't have as many options. But in the summer, it's actually a really good peg.
Is it? Yeah.
Because them reeds grow up really high on the island, and you can catch shallow sort of 7 metres to the island where you can throw casters.
Really?
You catch really well there to that island, and also this right edge can be really good fishing shallow. So it's a brilliant peg this in the summer when the fish want to be there, particularly when you get like a warm westerly wind blowing up this end of the lake. In the winter, they don't tend to use it, just so that, you know, everyone's got a bit of water to fish in, really.
Yeah.
It's a little bit penned in, this peg.
That's where I'd draw, pal.
No, I don't think so.
In the
No, you'd be somewhere more like this on this back bank here.
right in the middle.
Yeah, so this is a good area of the lake in the winter. 10, 11, 12. They put all 3 pegs in a line, again, for that reason. In the past, when they've just put sort of 2 in, or 10 and 12 and leave 11 out, the pegs are just absolutely brilliant. So they put all 3 in just to try and even it up. It's just a brilliant area of the lake, this. It's actually extended this lake back. So before I've ever actually fished here, and he was actually showing me pictures today, Keith, in the lodge, of when the lake was a little bit smaller. So he actually dragged these pegs back a fair few metres and made the lake a little bit bigger. So there's actually quite a good inside shelf now. It's quite a hard bottom, short.
Right.
So when the wind blows sort of at you on this bank, it can be a brilliant bank for fishing short pole, you know, in the summer, but also in the winter with maggots.
Really?
When that wind's at you, because you've got a nice depth, nice hard bottom, you can catch well. And then out on the original, you know, lake at sort of 13 metres, you can catch well there dobbing. Tends to be a good area for dobbing on
Middle
this
of the
lake.
Is it? Yeah.
Generally, this lake isn't as good for dobbing as the little lake, but on this bank, you can often catch well dobbing and shallow with maggots. A little bit deeper channel, sort of 4 and a bit foot of water on your long pole. You can catch well dobbing and fishing maggots, sort of shallow in the winter. Obviously, cast as shallow in the summer. Again, peg 11, very much the same. Brilliant peg. You're the middle of 3 anglers a lot of the time here, and it still always holds a lot of fish. And then we've got peg 12, again, pretty much the same. Good right edge here on peg 12, just down in this cut in the summer, nice shallow water.
I bet, yeah.
And then even if 11 isn't in the summer, if you're on a Wednesday match and you've got a bit of room, this is a lovely weed bed. You can imagine how big that grows out in the summer.
Even in December.
Yeah, in the summer it grows out, and you can catch shallow on caster down the edge as well. Sort of 3 foot of water there. So, yeah, that's another good tactic. Now, I'm going to walk round to what I'm going to say. I'm going to put it out there, and I don't like saying this about any peg. It's probably the worst peg on the venue, or my least favourite peg.
I was going to ask that, to be fair.
Peg 14.
You've said great things about every peg so far.
To be honest, there is a lot of fish on most of the pegs on this lake, and I don't like this peg, but to be honest, it still does throw up a few fish. But the problem with this peg is you sort of little bit round on a bit of a corner.
Right.
So obviously when peg 16's in, when peg 12's in, you're a little bit hemmed in, but I wouldn't let it put you off too much if you did draw it. You'll still get a good day's fishing. There's still plenty of bites. Now in the summer, tends to be more of an edge peg, not as many F1s. So normally sort of down that edge,
In that little hole.
just in that little hole, you can get a few carp, and then just down that right edge against that slab, just past the reeds, that could be another good spot. And I think if you draw a peg like this in the summer, where you know you're not going to compete shallow, you are better off being positive, fishing for carp and fishing your 2 edges. This time of year, you've just got to see what happens on the day. Like some days, if the wind sort of blows into this end, there will be a few fish topping sort of between the aerator and peg 16 here, and this area will all fish well, so you might still catch a few on 14 just fishing maggots long. If not, it can sometimes struggle. It's just one of them. Not every peg on the lake can be a good peg, but you know, you'll still get a day's fishing. That's the nice thing on here in the winter. Even a bad peg, you're going to get you know, you've got potential to catch sort of even 30-40 pound fish when it's rock hard, even on a hard peg, which I think is good winter fishing.
Absolutely.
And then round to the final peg what tends to be in on this lake, and that's peg 16. Again, it's a funny peg this. It's one of them that I'd say it's not always one that people like to draw, but it tends to throw up from time to time. It's another peg that gives you a few options, and it's one of them pegs that seems to hold quite a few stockies, like the smaller fish, so you tend to get some bites. Now, obviously on this peg you've got your line just straight out in front of you, but you've also got quite a long edge round to peg 1 to your right, so you can sometimes catch just down the edge in front of this pallet, or you know, just in the open water to your right in this little channel here, so just in that dark line where you've got the tree, you can catch there. And generally you get these smaller F1s. I don't know why they live on this peg, but they just tend to be here, some smaller fish. So yeah, I'd say generally these are sort of the harder areas, sort of 14 and 16, but this peg is also a peg that can throw up because you have got a few little options. So yeah.
How many times have you
That's the
drew this
big
area,
lake.
Chris?
Not very often, mate.
No.
I try not to come round here too much. To be fair, I have drew it a few times, and I've actually, last winter, I actually managed to scrape a match win off 14, one of the matches. I also had it another time and bombed out, but I did have it and managed to scrape a match win. I think I had a good moan, and then I ended up with 50 odd pound and won.
Oh, lovely.
So you just never know, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and I might have even beat Key by about 2 outs off the next peg that
Oh,
day.
that's
He was on
always great,
16, so I might have, you know, wanted to get that one in.
you needed to get that in, God. So that's the big lake completed, I would
Yeah,
say.
that's the big lake. Well, you know, the lake we call a big lake. It's not a massive lake,
It
but
would be the small lake on a lot of venues, wouldn't it?
yeah, but it's nice. You get 10 anglers round that lake
Yeah, you
in
can.
the, you know, all year round. But in the winter, you get 10 anglers round that lake, and it still fishes really well.
It still fishes, isn't it?
Yeah, it still fishes brilliant. So, yeah, that's the little lake, and then that's the big lake. So now we're coming on to the little lake, and this one, for a little lake, you will not believe how good the quality of the fish are and how many fish there is in this lake. It is absolutely brilliant, this lake. I can't stress to you enough. And for a winter venue, I don't think there's many that come better than this lake. Now, starting with the first peg, this is 19. Now, depending on how many anglers are on the lake, they either peg this peg on its own when there's 5 anglers on this lake, which is generally they either put 5 or 6 on, or they'll put 20 and 29 in and leave this one out. But when this one's in, when there's 5 pegs, you've got quite a lot of options. Now, it's a real shallow peg, this, probably only 2.5 foot deep all around. But that's a real good thing sometimes for when you want to catch them on the bottom. Now, they're notorious on this lake for not liking feeding on the deck. Even middle of winter, they want to sit up on you. Now, on this peg, because it's nice and shallow, you can tend to catch them on the bottom. So 2 lines, left and right.
Ah.
So I'll have a line in this white water there,
Oh, yeah.
11, 13 metres, just where you can catch some bait in nice and accurate. Same depth to your left, just in this dark water.
Oh, nice.
2 lines, and just literally I just catch a few maggots, fish maggots on the bottom, and you tend to just be able to nick a few fish from each side. Every now and again you'll catch a few fish here dobbing as well. If you feel a few fish with your plummet, have a good dob. But for me it's more of a deck peg.
Out of all the pegs, 2 and a bit foot deep?
2.5 foot deep, yeah. And out of all the pegs on this lake, this is probably the peg that you tend to spend the most time fishing on the bottom, just because it's very shallow. But yeah, it's still a peg that throws up really well. Like last winter, there were spells where this peg fished brilliant, where them dobbing fish weren't coming out as often, and because this peg's a little bit shallower, you could catch them on the bottom. No foul up fish, nice clean bites, and that's when it's a good peg, when you know the fish are on the deck and you can catch them a little bit easier on this peg. So we'll follow around to the cold bank, as they call it. Yeah.
Why do they call it that?
Because the trees sort of stop you getting any sun on this side, so it's always very cold. Now, it's probably an area, again, that people don't like drawing in the winter, but it's still an area that can hold a lot of fish. Like, this is peg 20, which, like I say, when there's 6 on the lake, they put peg 20 in. And, again, on this peg, you've got the options to fish just to the edge of the island there. So, normally more dobbing around the islands. I don't tend to feed up to the bank there. I tend to find that you need to be fishing in the open water to catch well feeding, but you can have a quick go dob into the island, and then again, obviously if you're on this peg, you're basically would be fishing where peg 19's right hand line would be, just straight out in front of you there, sort of 11-13 metres again on maggots on the bottom, and yeah, that tends to be where you catch on this peg. Again, it's one of them that sometimes it can throw up, sometimes the fish don't really want to be in the shallow water, but when they do, you can catch them well here on the bottom, so it can be a good peg.
Lovely.
But yeah, a little bit cold in that corner, I'll be honest. When you know, middle of winter, you probably don't want to be there. Middle of summer, I actually didn't mention the summer, to be fair.
Yeah, you didn't.
When you're on peg 19, again, it's quite a shallow peg, so generally you just sort of fish short pole.
Oh, do you?
On the bottom, on the short pole. It's quite silty and deep in your edges. When I say deep in your edges, it's probably the same depth in the edge as it is out in the open.
Right.
So you tend to just fish short pole. 2 short pole lines maybe with meat. Same on peg 20, brilliant short pole peg, meat or maybe casters and worms. And you can just empty it on the bottom. You tend to catch a lot of carp as well, fishing like that. So that can be how you can score really well on them pegs in the summer.
Not as good for shallow.
Not as good for shallow, but you can catch really, really well on the bottom. And because you're fishing on the bottom, you're going to get an odd bigger carp mixed in. Now, coming over to 22. Now, it's one of these pegs, this. In the summer, it's probably one of the out-and-out flyers that you want to draw. In the winter, it can be a bit hit and miss, depending on where the fish want to be. Now, it actually won the match on Thursday, this peg. And they caught to the left towards sort of facing 19. So that's always a good place to put a line in the winter. If peg 19's in, not 20, you can have a line to your left, just in front of this peg, but in the middle. And then obviously you can have an open water line. Like the fish on this lake tend to live in line with peg 27 there in the deeper water. So 13 metres in line with 27, just in that white water. That's another brilliant line.
Beautiful black tip float territory.
Black tip float, you can see your float perfect, exactly. Yeah, it's probably a little bit shallower than that far bank. It's probably about 3.5 foot deep here. And you can just obviously fish maggots. Sometimes catch a few short as well. But generally this peg, you want to be going a little bit further out your peg towards 19 and obviously facing peg 27 there,
yeah,
towards where the fish tend to shoal up. A little bit of dobbing and a bit of maggots on the deck. Yeah, and then in the summer, it's probably the best edge peg on the lake.
Is it?
You've got 2 brilliant edges. Just down in that hole there, that's a really nice edge. And the same here. Edges are brilliant both sides. Similar depth both sides, about 18 inches.
A carp fest.
Carp, yeah. Ground bait in the edge, maybe, or micro pellets in the edge, depending on what you want to fish. Normally meat or a bunch of maggots on the hook. And you tend to catch them big F1s and carp on this bank. And then also, brilliant shallow peg in the summer. You can go out to the aerate if you wanted to, but I tend to not go towards that aerate because sometimes you get snagged up. I just tend to fish in line with peg 27 again, 11 to 13 metres. Cast the shallow in the summer, you can bag up here. I've actually had my best weight at Firswood off this peg in the summer. So
what weight?
I think it was 298 pounds.
Bloody hell.
So a brilliant day's fishing. So yeah, brilliant summer peg this. Probably one of the best summer pegs. Bit hit and miss in winter, but still a peg where you can catch a lot of fish because obviously
you're not far from them.
You're not far from them, exactly. Now this is proper cold corner, this here now.
I've heard some moaning about
24.
this peg over the last few years.
Oh, in the winter people moan about this one. But actually this week just gone, it's fished really well here. I drew it on Wednesday and had a good day. And then Jordan Bate come second in the match off it on Sunday as well, yesterday. So obviously there's a few fish still in this peg, even though people tend to moan about this. But I think it's just purely because you can't ever feel your hands when you're on this peg because it never gets any sun.
Feels a bit like that now, to be honest.
Yeah, it's cold. And yeah, so on this peg, again, same sort of thing. You sort of, instead of fishing towards this corner, you want to go and face towards where you think the fish are. So I always would face peg 27, same as what I said on 22. Face 27, you know you're going towards the fish. 13 metres with maggots, mainly on the bottom. It's quite shallow, 3.5 foot, same as peg 22, but maybe a few dobbing as well. And then obviously at odd occasion you might catch them short, but generally your long pole in the winter is your best bet. And then obviously summertime, same again, face 27, cast the shallow, and then your two edges are really good. You've got a nice shallow edge to your left, same as the depth on 22, about 18 inches for ground bait, and then you've got a deep edge here to your right, and these reeds grow out nice in the summer, so you could fish shallow there, or I've caught well before chucking meat or chucking casters down there as well, just in that deep edge for carp. Tends to be a good right edge for carp this in the summer. There tends to be quite a lot of carp up this bank, but in the winter they don't tend to sit up there. They tend to be more out in the open water.
Nice.
So go round to the final bank, which is probably got some of the best pegs on the fishery on. Winter and summer, you'd want to draw these pegs.
Depends who where Kristian draws, folks.
Yeah. To be honest, this last few months I have had these pegs a lot.
No way.
But yeah, yeah, can't get off them. I've been getting a bit of stick for drawing round here all the time. So, like I say, hopefully this Wednesday I'll get off these pegs and I'll
get on to peg 2.
Get on somewhere, yeah, where I'm not going to get as much stick. But yeah, this is peg 26. Now I'm going to say the second best peg at Firswood.
Yeah.
After peg 28 next door. Now, basically the reason these pegs are so good is because the deepest two pegs on the lake, and they just hold the biggest volume of fish, and the fish just sit in your peg. Now the fish don't very rarely like to feed on the bottom here. Even in the middle of winter, you very rarely catch on the deck. So it's an out and out dobbing and shallow approach for me. Now, again, when you're on this peg, the fish live in front of 27 in the open water. So you've got sort of peg 24 in front of you, and then you've got peg 23 and then peg 22 there. If you line up just in this white water in between pegs 23 and 22, just there, you're right in line with where the fish are going to be. And I normally fish again, sort of 11 here's a couple of fish here mooching about, showing himself, saying hello. But yeah, if you line up there, dob bread or fish maggot shallow, just pinging, 5 or 6, 8 maggots maybe at most, and just laying your rig in. Even in the winter you'll catch well shallow. And then summertime, obviously same line, cast a shallow, nice little edge there, shallow water, ground bait, and then this edge, nice deeper edge.
Top
again.
Job.
Yeah, meat, casters, and then you're covering your options. So summertime, left and right edge, shallower casters. Wintertime, dobbing bread, and then also shallow. But I tell you where you can catch well on this peg. There's a bit of a shelf as well on the inside. There's actually a bit of a slope that comes up. And if you line up with the aerator there, top kitten 2, you can also have a good run of fish short late on.
He knows every peg, he knows the contours.
It's one of the pegs where you can catch well short on the bottom on this lake in the winter. So even though out long you tend to catch him, where it's sort of 4.5 foot, you tend to catch everything shallow. It comes up to sort of just under 4 foot, maybe 3.5 foot there short, and you can catch them on the deck late on. So it's always worth, just a bit of a throwaway, keep chucking 10 maggots in line with that aerator. And some days you see a few blows come up on that, and you can go in and catch a few short as well. So even though I say it's an out and out shallow peg, you can catch well on that short line as well on that peg.
Nice.
And then going on to the last two pegs, the first one we're going to show is probably the best peg at Firswood.
The best
It's the peg where if whoever draws it, it's always got the pressure on them because you feel like you've got to catch here. Peg 28. And basically all the fish, like I say, just live in front of this 27, but they also live, a lot of fish live on this peg towards the island as well. So you've almost got two good lines where you can dob a lot of fish. So you've got in line with the tree, just into the dark water, 11, 13 metres, and sort of up to sort of the pallet there on 24. You've got that area to dob fish, also to fish shallow with maggots. And then you can dob them towards the island. And even today we had a bit of a fish on this peg doing some dobbing earlier. And we caught some on this post here as well. So you've got quite a lot of spots where you can dob a lot of fish there. Just an out and out sort of dobbing and shallow peg this in the winter.
Quite deep, isn't it?
Quite deep. A lot of fish shoaled up. They all want to feed off the bottom. So like I say, dobbing bread, sort of shallow with maggots, 2.5 foot deep is normally the way to go. And yeah, if you get a chance to draw this in the winter, you're going to have a brilliant day's fishing. There's so many fish here. Awesome. So going on to the last peg, which is 29, the one in the corner. And this is, like I say, very much the same as what I was saying about peg 20 and 19. Nice and shallow, so you catch them on the bottom. But you can also sometimes dob a few fish just on the edge of them reeds as well. Some reason, whenever they peg this peg and that peg instead of 19, some fish tend to sit there. I don't know what it is. I've seen it happen a few times. I've never ever caught down that edge off 19, but I've caught off it on peg 29. I don't know what it's all about, but that's just what seems to happen. And then, like I say, quite shallow, so you catch them on the bottom on maggots out in front, 2.5 foot of water. Now again, in the summer, because it's quite shallow, it's a brilliant short pole peg, but it's also a brilliant right edge. Nice shallow water down that right edge. Not like 19 and 20 where you haven't really got great edges. Peg 29's got a really good right edge down there, and you can catch well with carp there on ground bait and maggots. So if you draw this peg, more deck fishing even in the summer, short pole, long pole on the bottom maybe, and then you've obviously got your right edge as well. But that's basically Firswood wrapped up. Obviously it's only quite a small venue, and the tactics tend to be very similar depending on, you know, on all the pegs, but hopefully that's give you a bit of an idea of roughly where to go on each peg, and if you draw it, roughly what depth you've got. And yeah, it's brilliant fishing. So if you want to come and get some bites somewhere in winter and you just want to, you know, have a busy day, come down to Firswood and you'll really enjoy it.